Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to make a video and talk about POE splitting. So POE stands for Power over Ethernet. And so basically from your switch, if you have a POE enable switch over the Ethernet cord, it can provide power to the device that is on the other end. So for example, you could be running a camera. This is a Unifi camera, for example. This thing is POE capable. So if I have a switch that can provide power over this cord, obviously I can plug it in and it powers the camera. I don't need to plug it into an outlet. There's lots of other options. So like if I have a computer of some sort, this is a Raspberry Pi, for example, 3B Plus, I think. There's a few options. So you can buy one of these fancy, they're called POE hats. I think it's a hat because it goes on top of, as if it was a hat, on top of the computer or device. And so you can plug this thing in, and then the POE, the Ethernet port, provides the power to this device. You can also get these, what are called splitters. And so you can plug in POE coming from your switch, and then it splits it out into the internet and then USB to power the actual device. And so if you don't have a switch, well, first of all, I recommend getting a switch that can do this. Like this is super flexible and powerful. But if you don't have that, you can get what's called a POE injector. And so this thing has a power cord on one end that plugs into the wall, you know, a normal outlet. It takes an Ethernet jack coming in from your switch that doesn't provide POE, and then coming out, this like red one, power is coming out. So you could imagine that from my switch, I've got an Ethernet jack coming in with the internet, and then I plug this into the wall, and then coming out, I've got power to power something like a camera or a Raspberry Pi or whatever you're up to. So this is called a POE injector. This one happens to be a Unifi one. There's 3 or 4 different POE specs. This one supports AF, which is rather old. I think this is from some Unifi access points that I got a long time ago. But another thing you can do is, well, first of all, you need a switch that has POE. But if you hit a situation where you've got one Ethernet cord with POE going to a certain location and you need 2 or more devices powered, that's where we get into these splitters. And so this one I got off Amazon. It's called Ultra POE, and the one in this box happens to be a 4-port splitter. And so POE comes in and then it can power 4 devices. So we'll open this up. It's sort of a review. So I just bought another one of these because I'm gonna hook up some more cameras, but I've been running one of these for over a year in some pretty harsh climate locations, and I'll show you the setup in a second, and it hasn't been an issue. So I just bought this the other day. It comes with these little like rack ears that you can put on the side and mount to whatever, but I have the 4-port splitter one, and so power can come in over Ethernet here, and then it can power 4 more devices. And what's really cool is you'll see you don't need to plug this in. So it takes the power coming in from your switch and then splits it out and lets you power more devices. And so we're going to go up in my garage and I'll show you how I've used one of these. And again, I just bought this as a new one I just bought, but I bought the exact same item over a year ago. It's been running in my garage powering 2 Unifi cameras, and I'll show you that setup now. All right, so out in the garage, this is where one camera is. This is probably the first camera I actually ever installed when we moved in. That's a G3 Bullet, a Unifi G3 Bullet. And this line here that you see coming up the wall is a line directly from the switch. So there's an Ethernet jack over here on this wall that I snaked up to here. And the original setup was just this one camera. And that's a PoE line coming from my 48-port switch down in the network rack. And eventually I decided that I wanted a better view, a better camera view of the driveway. And so what I did was I ran an Ethernet line from here through these rafters, and then over here you can actually see it, this blue line here. I punched the hole out through the wall to the outside, and there's actually another camera directly on the other side of that cable. I'll show the view here. I'll overlay a view here. Another aside, I guess, is that you can see I brought the cable over and then I kind of looped it around for a little bit and then sent it out. That's what's called a service loop. So you never know what you're going to do eventually. So always leave yourself some slack, even with electrical wire, Romex cabling or anything, but especially with some Cat5, Ethernet cable. Someday I might want to move that just a little bit or whatever, or crimp it again or whatever the case. Now I know that I can do it because I have what's called a service loop. At any rate, so I sent that over there, and the problem I had was I've got power over Ethernet coming over here to power this one camera, and I can't power a second camera with it. So one option was an injector, like I said. And I do have a pretty good setup. So over here with the garage door opener, I have an outlet. So I could have installed an injector and done that, but I don't know. I really like the idea of powering everything from the switch. And that's one of the reasons I got the big Unifi switch. Is it's so beefy in terms of its capabilities, to power a bunch of devices. And so I didn't want to deal with, plugging something in over here and running it over here, blah, blah, blah. And so the idea was to power all these cameras off the switch because it's plenty capable. And so what I've got going here is that POE splitter I showed you earlier. I've got this one over here with the little ears on it to mount it. And what I'm going to do is I'll get on a ladder and show you what I've got going on up there. All right, so up here I've got that POE splitter with the power coming in, and then it's splitting it to the two cameras. And I mounted this about a year ago, and it's dealing with some pretty harsh temperatures. So today it's 39 degrees here in this garage, and it gets colder. Not much colder than this, but I mean, it's definitely dealing with some lower temperatures. It probably drops into the low 30s occasionally. And in the summer, for sure, it gets up into almost 100, maybe over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's 39 degrees Fahrenheit in here right now. And so you can see it's got power coming in, and then it's splitting two out, one to this camera, of course, and then another one. And then here you can see I made myself another service loop. So directly off the splitter, I've got plenty of extra slack in case I need to move the splitter or whatever, and I don't have to redo these cables. And that obviously just keeps going towards the other camera, which I showed you earlier. So yeah, this thing has been running around the clock for over a year, about a year maybe, and never had an issue. So I've been pretty impressed with it. So I've been running this particular POE extender for over a year with the two camera setup I showed you. And one thing I was pretty worried about when I got it was could it actually power two cameras at once, even though it had the 4 ports? And it definitely can. So it's running a G3 bullet and a G4 bullet, both Unifi cameras. So yeah, if you're looking for an extender to take a POE line coming off your router and run a G3 bullet and a G4 bullet, basically that's my exact setup, you're going to be totally fine with this thing. I bought another one because I have a pretty similar setup where I have a POE line going to one camera and I want to extend it into 2 cameras. So that's why I got this one. And I'll make, stay tuned. I'm going to make another video about actually running the POE line, the actual Ethernet line that I showed you. I'll film that and and show how exactly I'm going to use this second one. And the reason, so this particular brand, and I'll link it in Amazon. I'm obviously not sponsored, but I've been running this thing for over a year, and it's been totally fine. Like in pretty extreme temperatures. I'm here in Colorado, and it gets cold, it gets hot, and this thing has never skipped a beat. And I love that I don't have to actually plug it in. So there's literally not a way to plug it in. I think I showed earlier. It just goes straight off the PoE in from the switch, and then splits it out into the four ports. And it has not been a problem for the G3 bullet and the G4 bullet. Haven't had an issue at all. And so I highly recommend this thing. I'll put a link to this exact item in the description here. It's actually gotten cheaper by a few bucks US dollars. So I think I paid a little more when I bought it a year ago, and it's a little cheaper now. And so I don't know. I think it's great. I think it's great. The build quality is really high. It's solid. It doesn't feel crappy. I've been very, very impressed with it. If you're interested, I'd be willing to do some stress tests, if you will, with all four ports and see just exactly what it can power. I didn't dive into the specs of how it takes the PoE in and what it can handle, splitting it out four ways, but I think it's great. Anything you can power with your Switch, I think is awesome. Like a Raspberry Pi, like I was saying earlier, or the cameras or stuff. It's just so much more streamlined and easier if your Switch can do everything and you're not having to deal with injectors or whatever. So anyway, yeah, let me know what you think, and look out for more videos of this guy. I'm gonna film fully installing this one and actually adding a second camera the way what I showed you earlier. And so yeah, hope you like what you see, and I'll see you in the next one.